Hi everybody, my name is Greg Anderson, and over a year ago I made a video talking about my experience with solar panels on the roof of our house after we'd had them running for about a year. Well, since that's been over a year ago, I think it's time for a follow-up. So now this is my experience with solar panels on the house after having them all running for over 2 years. So 2 years into this, what is my experience? Well, first of all, just kind of to summarize some of the stuff I talked about in the other video, I initially talked with some different salespeople from different companies, and I picked one, and they're the ones that sold us the system and installed everything and took care of all the permits necessary to get the system designed and approved by the county building inspector, and also to get it approved by the electric utility company and get that all taken care of so that we could have it all installed, up, running, totally above board. So they took care of that for me. And in summary, they sold us exactly what they said they were going to sell us. That's what was installed. It did exactly what they said it was going to do, and it cost exactly what they said it would cost. Having said that, let me give you a few more particulars. See, first of all, we started with just one inverter, okay, and one set of solar panels, and we were doing pretty well with that. After 1 year, we used just about as much as we made in that year. But then we had a radon mitigation installed on the house, and I realized we were going to be using more electricity. And rather than just pay the difference directly to the electric company, Rocky Mountain Power is our electric utility for this area, I thought, no, let's see if we can expand our system. So we got this second inverter and 8 more solar panels. And so now I have experience with that system after 1 year in. So that's added to my experience now with 2 years on the original system. Okay, so the original system was designed to generate, here's what they said it would do, 10,198.4 kilowatt hours in a year. So what actually happened? Okay, actual production in the first year was 10,068 kilowatt hours. And then the second year was an additional 10,020 kilowatt hours. So a little bit less than what they said it was going to do. The first year, we missed the mark by 130 kilowatt hours. Now that's about 3 days worth of electricity in the month of June. The second year, we missed it by 178 kilowatt hours. So again, just 3 or 4 days in the summer to make up that difference. That's how much we missed. From a percentage basis, if you want to run the numbers, the first year we hit 98.72% of our projected generation, and the second year was 98.25% of our projected generation. I think that's really good, considering when they estimate what the panels can generate in a year. Those people who design the system have to take into account lots of different factors, principally how many sunny days versus cloudy days are we expected to have in this area in a year. They also took into account shadows from the trees next door, just the various crazy angles on our roof. Our roof was not very good for putting in solar panels. That's me saying that. That's not what they said. They said, okay, we can work with this. I thought we needed more south-facing roof surface, but they came up with a system anyway. So considering all those factors, I think hitting it by 98% of what they predicted is really pretty good. As for the second set of panels and that second inverter, the projected yearly generation was 3,001 kilowatt hours, and what we actually did in that first year was 3,134 kilowatt hours, and so we exceeded the projection by 133 kilowatt hours, or by 4.43%. So we hit 104% of what was expected with this other set of panels. So that all works out pretty well. All right, so what would be another factor that would affect how well we reached our projected generation for the year? And I think the one thing it's really difficult to factor in is snow. Okay. Now, before we had the first set of solar panels installed, I asked the salesman about snow, and he told me he didn't really know for sure. Now, I'm going to take his word on that and say, yeah, he probably didn't really know for sure. Now, it's been almost 3 years since that initial consultation with that salesman. So maybe by now they know a little bit more about how snowfall and snow accumulations affect solar panels and the projected generation for the year. But I'll tell you this much. I live in northern Utah, and about 15 miles that way is the town of Ogden. You go down a canyon, you go to the other side of a giant mountain, and you go down about 600 feet in elevation to get to Ogden. In Ogden, when it snows, even if it's a pretty good, significant snowstorm, after 3 or 4 days, maybe a week, most of that snow has melted away, especially if it's on surfaces like a rooftop. So, and again, that's 15 miles away by car. But here, higher elevation, other side of the mountain, it's quite a different climate in the winter. And if we get a significant snowfall in the month of December, you might not see the bare ground again until the end of March. Snow stays. So for the salesman who lives on the other side of the mountain to tell me he wasn't sure how snowfall was going to affect my solar panels, I'll take his word for that. Like I said, by now they probably have more data because they have a lot more customers up here than they had 3 years ago. I will say a good way to gauge this, if you're wondering about your own situation where you live, think of this. Do you have a car or an RV or something that just is parked out in the back field that sits there all winter long? Or do you have a neighbor with such a vehicle? If that exists in your neighborhood and you can observe this, then I would say you can easily figure out when it snows, does the snow slide off of it all by itself without someone brushing it away? Does that happen within a few days of a snowstorm? Or will that snow, if you don't brush it off, will it just stay there all winter long until all the other snow melts? So that would be the indicator, I think, of whether snow is going to stay on your solar panels very long for a significant amount of time after a snowfall. I determined here, and another factor as far as that goes, is what is the angle of the roof. See, my roof, it's not all that steep, and the solar panels are installed parallel to the roof line. So the solar panels are as steep as the roof. Now you could say it's a very smooth glass-like surface on the solar panels, so snow would just kind of slide off of that the first time it gets just a little bit above freezing. Well, again, take a look at the car. If snow slides off the windshield on that parked car all by itself, then maybe that gives you an idea of how well the snow is going to slide off these solar panels. Again, my roof, not that steep. The solar panels, it just doesn't slide off there very much by itself. So what did I do? Well, I did this for you. I collected data, see, and I wanted to know how much electricity we could generate in the winter time versus the summertime, because the angle of the sun is lower in the sky and the length of daylight is shorter, all that stuff. So I thought, as I was keeping track of how much we were generating, and I was writing down the numbers off the inverter every day and putting it on a spreadsheet, I wanted to know how summer versus winter, how much we were generating on a daily basis. And in order to do that through the winter, I actually went up on the rooftop as often as I could after a snowstorm and swept snow off of the panels and tried to get them completely clear and maintain that throughout the winter. I do not recommend you do that, okay? I have to make this official because, this is going out to the public. Number one, safety, okay? It's not safe to be up on the roof if you don't really know what you're doing. And especially when it's snow up there, you don't know how slippery that roof is. And you won't know until you start to slip. There could be a lot of places on the roof that seem perfectly fine. You can march around there in whatever boots you have on, and all of a sudden you've hit a slippery spot and you just didn't know that was going on. So again, the amount you're generating in the winter isn't that much. So if you come up a little short and you have to pay the difference to the electric utility, hey, safety first. It's worth paying a few extra dollars to the electric utility because you're not generating all that much in the winter. All right. The other thing is whatever you're using to sweep that snow off of your panels. See, I sometimes would use this, and that's pretty good, but you know, you don't know what kind of damage you might do to your panels depending on what you're using to push snow off of it. So again, you might damage the panels, and you might also dislodge the panels because they're mounted to these brackets up there. And if you start pushing things around and all of a sudden you run into some ice and something's frozen onto the panel, again, just don't mess around with it. So again, officially, stay off the roof, let those panels take care of themselves, and you can decide how much how long they're going to stay there based on, again, looking at the parked cars around you in the neighborhood. So again, what did the salesman tell me? He told me he wasn't sure about snow on the panels. He thought maybe it would slide off by itself because it was a glass-like surface, a very smooth surface. But he didn't tell me that for sure, so I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. He wasn't trying to deceive me. He was just speculating because he didn't really know. And again, because he lived on the other side of the mountain, it probably would happen in his neighborhood, but not so much up here. All right, so that's all I'm going to say about snow. If that's an issue and you think, you run the risk of having panels that are going to be covered with snow for months at a time, something to talk to the salesman about when they're designing your system. Okay, question. Will the panels still generate even if they've got a little bit of snow on it? Imagine you got a car covered with snow and you open the door and you sit inside the car. There's still some light coming in. Okay, so if there's some light coming through the snow onto the panels, are they still going to generate something? Yeah, they'll probably generate something, but it's not going to be much, and in some cases you have to kind of reach a certain threshold. It needs to be a certain amount of light before the panels can do much. So if it's super, super dim, the panels really aren't going to do anything. To reach that threshold, then they can do something, but if they're covered with snow, just don't expect anything out of it on that day. A sunny day versus a cloudy day, you can have a significant reduction in how much you're going to generate. Even in the summer, if it's a really dark, cloudy day, those panels are going to be hampered quite a bit trying to do what they do. So, just keep these in mind. It's fun for me to analyze all this, but now because of how much electricity we're generating with this second set of panels, I know I'm going to have some extra electricity in our solar panel bank before the first day of spring, which is when they reset the bank. So there's going to be a point real soon here where generating that extra electricity it's going to be pointless. So and my wife is going to be relieved when I say, honey, we've got plenty of electricity. I've been tracking it on the spreadsheet, and I don't need to go up and sweep the snow off the solar panels anymore this whole year. And she's going to say, that's great, and try not to get up there ever again. So she worries about it. I try to be safe, but again, don't do it. Don't get up there. Don't get on your roof. Don't do it. Now, one other thing I noticed that I didn't cover in the previous video because I didn't really know, I think that sometimes the panels, the inverters, are not generating the electricity at exactly 60 hertz. Okay, so alternating current means that the polarity of the electricity is alternating, and it should be tuned to 60 times per second, or 60 hertz, 60 cycles per second. That's what all the alternating current on our American grid is supposed to do. And if it's a little bit more than that or a little bit less than that, it probably won't affect your major appliances or your TVs or anything. Everything you have is probably going to run fine, even if there's a little bit of variation in the frequency of that alternating current. But those of you who know what I'm talking about maybe think, oh, I want it to be exactly 60 hertz, and if it's a little bit more or a little bit less, that's going to bug me. Again, unless you've got really sensitive equipment, it's not going to make a difference. But I have noticed, now I have got an old alarm clock, and it's an LED clock, and it's not quartz. It keeps time using the alternating current frequency to advance the minute, every minute. So I have noticed that this particular clock seems to run a little slow ever since I went with solar panels. So That's the only thing that seems to be affected in any significant way, any discernible way, by using solar power and the inverters going into the house, pumping that power into the house versus just taking power off of the grid. That particular clock seems to run just a little bit slow. So, every couple of months I just punch it ahead another minute, and then it seems. So I don't know, just a funny thing. And I haven't completely analyzed what is the cause of this, if it has something to do with when we switch from grid power to inverter power. Is there some kind of little blip there that's indiscernible to me, but it affects the clock? Or do these inverters somehow run at a slightly lower frequency than they should, at 60 cycles per second? I don't know. But it's something I have noticed. And I should mention, I really appreciate all the many thousands of views on my previous video and videos, and thank you very much. And I've gotten a lot of comments. Some of them are brutal. I have to say it's okay. It's all right. But there are plenty of people who seem very concerned that this whole thing is not a very wise investment for me. That somehow the whole, I think some people think the entire concept of solar power, there's something wrong with it. So I think I get some criticism just based on that overall concern. And others who just think that maybe I got a raw deal financially, or I'm unwise, or the people that designed the system, there were problems there. Again, I'll take that all in stride. But I will say once again, they sold me what they said they were going to sell me. It does what they said it was going to do, and it cost what they said it was going to cost. So I'm satisfied. And the other thing is, I haven't told you everything I have in mind for the future. So one thing that I would really like to explore here in the next year or two or three is I'm keeping a close eye on the technology for battery backup systems, because I'd like to be a little bit less dependent on the grid. I'm out in the rural areas here, and the grid, I think, doesn't really get maintained, it just gets repaired. Okay, so when things go wrong, we could be out of, we got the lights out for a couple hours or more, and so that's a real hassle, because as I've explained, and other people probably know this already, when the grid goes down, even if it's the middle of a nice sunny day, the inverters have to turn off, because we can't be pumping, we're connected to the grid, so if we're pumping power out to the grid when the grid is down and someone's out there trying to repair it, well, they can't have that. So these inverters at the moment are designed so that the grid's down, they're down, even if there's plenty of sunshine. But if I had a battery backup system, then this could be configured differently. And if it's a sunny day and the grid goes down, we're still fine. We're running on backup, or we're still charging our backups using solar. All that's in the works, and I'm going to do something about that when I feel the time is right. And a very important part of that infrastructure is having the panels and the inverters in place. So I'm happy with that. And whatever I do later on, just don't worry about my finances. Okay, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun when it happens. Also, again, I want to emphasize that the salesman who has talked to me about all this stuff that I've done and helped me to purchase all of these things, he let me know that, yes, these solar panels do have a limited lifespan. He thought it might be about 25 years, and then we'd have to think about replacing components, or maybe, the whole system. That's okay with me. I know about that. No one's deceived me about that. The salesman tells me about that. I hope I have covered all the different topics that you would want to discuss with a salesman if you are also thinking about getting into this. I found that the salesman I worked with, completely open and honest about everything. I haven't run into any surprises. Even the snow bit, I kind of anticipated that would be an issue. And the only thing, again, I talked about the frequency going a little bit less than 60 hertz. I think if that were a real big issue for you, you could probably buy some power conditioners or, uninterruptible power supplies and things that could correct that if that's an issue for you. But for most of us, that's not going to affect our appliances and other electronic devices in a significant way. So yes, talk to the salespeople. I don't know what the current deal is between new customers and the power utility that installed this net meter on the house. Okay, I'm grandfathered into an old deal, which is for every kilowatt hour I put out to the grid, I get to take one back in at a time when I'm not generating enough electricity to cover my usage. Okay, I know they have a more complicated formula now as far as what they will give you credit for going out and coming back in. It's no longer a one-to-one thing. Your salesperson should be able to explain that to you, and there shouldn't be any surprise for you on that. I don't know what it currently is, so that's why I'm not going to talk about that right now. Something you will find out if you look into this. And I also think that again, there are a lot more customers using solar panels on the rooftop now than there were when I did it. So the salespeople should have a lot more information now than they did just a few years ago. I think if you decide to go for this, and if the numbers look good to you financially, and you're ready to do it, and everything seems to be falling in place, I see no reason not to go for it. All right, well, it's starting to snow, oddly enough, and it's getting dark. So I better wrap this up. Hey, I hope that these videos are informative to you. Really, my whole motivation here is I'm trying to tell you the things that I would have wanted to know from just an average guy, not just relying on the salesperson before I got into all this myself. And the bottom line is I'm satisfied with what has happened. I think it's fun. It's exciting for me somehow, for some reason, to have electricity generated right here on my house. And so whatever you decide to do, man, I hope it works out great for you. And I'll see you on another video.